I have a question for you. What do Thor, Odin, Loki, Freya, Surtur, Hel, and Nidhogg all have in common? If you said that they are all Norse gods, you are wrong. They're all characters in Elden Ring. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, ladies and gentlemen of the Elden Ring community. Through reading item descriptions, analyzing appearances, and making illogical jumps to conclusion, I now believe that Elden Ring's story is Norse mythology. Before I begin, I want to let you know that there will be no spoilers for the DLC in this video. I will only be referring to the 2 DLC trailers. However, I will be making some predictions that may spoil things accidentally. I want to give a huge shout out to Game Plus Alchemist, who first made a video on this topic. I am picking up the torch where he left off, and I didn't even know it. Additionally, I will be discussing Norse mythology through the eyes of the Norse, Germanic, and pagan text, so this theory will be extremely convoluted, and nothing I say is concrete. And with that out the way, let's start with Thor. Thor is the son of the Jotnar goddess Jord and the Aesir god Odin. Jotnar are a type of god called giants, and they can be anything from normal people to giants to gods and even creatures. The Aesir are just traditional gods. Thor has red hair from his mother's side. He wields the one-handed hammer Mjolnir. He is the god of thunder, and he wields lightning. But what makes Thor special is the fact that he hates giants. Despite the fact that he is part giant, he is constantly killing giants at Odin's command. When Ragnarok comes, Thor leads the fight against the invading Jotnar giants, killing most of the giants before he too is killed by the giant Jormungandr. This is very similar to Radagon. Radagon in Elden Ring is tied to an item called the Giant's Red Braid, which states that, and I quote, "Every giant is red of hair, and Radagon was said to have despised his own red locks. Perhaps that was the curse of their kind." This implies that Radagon is a descendant of the fire giants, and that he hated his giant's heritage, seeing it as a curse. He wields the one-handed hammer, Marika's hammer. He throws holy magic, which looks like lightning bolts, and although it is not directly stated in the game, through an observation that Tarnished Archaeologist made in his 15th episode, we can assume that Radagon was involved in the giant war. Tarnished Archaeologist observed that Radagon's statues have trellises and vines on them. These vines look very, very similar to the trees that we see in the mountaintops of the giants, and trellises are used to grow vines. And all of the bodies in the mountaintops of the giants have vines and thorn structures on them. If we assume that Radagon is associated with vines, or controls vines, then we can also assume that Radagon killed a majority of the fire giants, as almost every body in the mountaintops of the giants has vines on them. So both of the gods are the descendants of giants. They both have red hair. They both hate the giants and their giant's heritage. They both wield a one-handed hammer. They both throw lightning bolts. They're both named champion. Thor is the champion of the Aesir, and Muriel calls Radagon Great Champion Radagon, and they both fought a war against the giants and killed many giants. The similarities are striking, but let's discuss the trickster god Loki. Loki is the descendant of the giant Fadberti and his mother, the giant Laufey. Although he is a giant by heritage, he is considered an Aesir god, as he helps the Aesir gods quite frequently. Except when he doesn't. He has red hair and he is a shapeshifter. He uses his abilities to take on new identities. Famously, he turns into a fish to avoid Aesir prosecution, a horse to get pregnant, and a female giant to stop his brother from being revived. He constantly lies and plays tricks on the gods, and is infamous for questioning the Aesir and their authority on a semi-regular basis. He calls the gods adulterous and fickle, which is probably a lie, but in any case, Loki grows to hate the Aesir. Loki kills his brother in a ploy against the Aesir gods, and this results in him getting captured and tortured during Ragnarok. At the end of Ragnarok, Loki escapes and sides with the giants during the Aesir vs. Giant War. Sadly, he dies, fighting the Aesir god Heimdall. He is sometimes referred to as the household spirit by Germanic and pagan people, who believe that his spirit lives on and is mischievous, causing chaos in the house. But Loki is not a good nor evil god. He's simply a chaotic, mischievous god, who is completely apathetic to the Aesir. Lunar Princess Ranni is the descendant of Queen Rennala and Radagon. Rennala is a Carian queen, which makes Ranni a Carian princess, and Radagon is the descendant of giants, which makes Ranni part giant. Ranni had red hair, but now she's something different. Ranni had a black knife assassin carve the rune of death into her body, which left her burned and bodiless. So now Ranni lives as a spirit in a doll's body. This act allowed Ranni to abandon her body and change her fate, which allowed her to rebel against the Golden Order. We first meet Ranni in the Church of Ella, surrounded by mist. She lies and claims that she is the witch Renna. She asks if you are the Tarnished who rides a spectral steed called Torrent. If you lie to her and say that you don't ride Torrent, she compliments your willingness and ability to lie and thinks that lying will keep you safe. If you tell her that you do ride Torrent, she begins to question when the Tarnished will, and I quote, no longer be subservient to the two fingers. In either case, she gives you the spirit calling bell and disappears, taking her fog and mist with her. The Sword of Night and Flame states that the astrologers, who preceded sorcerers, established themselves in the mountaintops, and they consider the fire giants their neighbors. The Dark Moon Greatsword is another Carian-based weapon, which states that, and I quote, a moon greatsword is bestowed by a Carian queen upon her spouse, to honor long-standing tradition. This description implies that swords were used to represent marital alliances in Carian history. The word knight in Sword and Knight of Flame may be a reference to the moon. This could explain why the Sword of Night and Flame is hidden in the Carian manor, as it represents an ancient alliance between the Carians and the giants, and would have held great importance to them. So both of these gods are related to giants. They both have red hair, they lie and use secret identities, they both rebelled against the godly order in their lands, they're totally apathetic to the death of the gods, but they are also friendly with the giants. Loki is referred to as the household spirit, and Ranni just is a spirit in a doll's body. And both gods are neither good nor evil. They're simply doing what they think is right. But there's one other connection between the two. Ragnarok. Ragnarok is the prophecy of the god's apocalypse in Norse mythology. The prophecy goes something like this. Balder, an immortal god, is slain, and this causes a long, dangerous winter called Fimbulwinter to begin. The moon wolf catches the sun during the summer equinox, which causes an eclipse, and all the stars disappear from the night sky. The giants invade Asgard with Loki, so the Aesir and Vanir gods team up and fight the giants to try and save Asgard. But they fail and die in the process. Surtur, the Jotnar god of fire, in his dying breath, plunges his great sword into the heart of Asgard and lights it ablaze, destroying the realm completely. This single act shakes all the realms on Yggdrasil's branches, and lights the outside of the World Tree on fire. In the end, Yggdrasil ceases burning, the sun re-enters the sky, and Balder is reborn into the world as the last living god in a realm now ruled by men. So how does this connect to Ranni? Through Loki. The Aesir god that Loki killed before was Balder. Balder was unkillable because his mother Frigg made everything in the Nine Realms promise to not hurt Balder. Everything except mistletoe, because it was too young to make a promise. Loki learns of this weakness, crafts a mistletoe spear, and convinces Hodor, a blind god, to plunge the spear into Balder, which kills him instantly, setting Ragnarok into motion. This single act also turns mistletoe into the symbolic representation of death for the pagans. In Elden Ring, Ranni steals the rune of death from Malekith and imbues the Black Knife Assassin's daggers with destined death. This sets in motion her scheme, known as the Night of the Black Knives. She convinces the Black Knife assassins to kill Godwyn and go on a, and I quote, God hunt in the lands between, killing many demigods. The death of Godwyn pushes Queen Marika to shatter the Elden Ring, and this period is known as the Shattering. Pieces of the shattered Elden Ring in the form of great runes, shards, and rune arcs are scattered throughout the lands between. The demigod children begin collecting these fragments, and soon start fighting over them in a war known as the Shattering War. When the Shattering War is over, no lands are claimed, no demigods are felled. However, grace is given back to a select few tarnished, which causes them to rise from their graves and seek the Elden Ring for themselves. This is exactly what the player does. We wake up with our regained grace, and we kill the demigod children and claim their great runes. The Tarnished, or Melina, burns the Erd Tree, and we have a final face-off with Radagon and the Elden Beast, successfully usurping Queen Marika's order and starting a new age of the player's choice. Let's compare. Ragnarok and the Shattering are both started by gods who have giants' heritage. Both acts were committed as a form of rebellion against the ruling gods. They both created special weapons to kill gods. Loki created the mistletoe spear, and Ranni created the Black Knife Assassin's daggers. They both had a third party, Hodor and the Black Knife Assassins, kill the god. Baldur was Odin's favorite child, and Godwyn was Queen Marika's favorite child. Both resulted in a god war, like the Shattering and the Aesir versus Giant War. Yggdrasil and the Erdtree are both lit on fire. Ragnarok ends in the death of all gods, men reclaiming the world, and the resurrection of a long-dead god. Elden Ring ends with the death of all the demigods, the Tarnished reclaiming the world, and an undead Tarnished rising to godhood. They are incredibly similar. However, they differ in one small and explainable way. In Norse mythology, Loki is captured after killing Baldur by the Aesir gods. He is imprisoned and tortured with snake venom for most of Ragnarok, and then frees himself, only to be killed by Heimdall. In Elden Ring, Ranni escapes any repercussions from Queen Marika and the Two Fingers by slaying her body. In doing so, she not only abandons her fate with the Golden Order, but she also abandons any fate that she would share with her Norse counterpart. Sacrificing a part of your body to change your fate is a shared theme in Norse mythology and in Elden Ring, but Ranni is not the best example of this. The best example of this is Odin. And before I continue, I need to mention something. These next comparisons are way more speculative and confusing, so pay close attention, ask questions in the comment section, and if you start to think I'm crazy, welcome to the party. Now, let us discuss Odin. Odin is the king of the Aesir gods and is known as the Allfather for ruling all of the 9 realms. He has blonde hair, is missing an eye, and is often portrayed wearing a cloak and a hat to hide his appearance. He is a shapeshifter and is portrayed as a smart, cunning, and manipulative leader, but he wanted more. So Odin went to the foot of Yggdrasil and visited the giant Mimir at his well. Mimir's well is fed by the fallen dew from Yggdrasil's leaves, and this water feeds Yggdrasil's roots, in an endless cycle which imbues the water with Seidr magic to see the future. Odin asked Mimir to drink from his well, and Mimir agreed on the condition that Odin made a blood sacrifice and removed his eye first. Odin agreed and promptly removed his left eye and offered it to Mimir. Mimir tossed his eye into the well of wisdom, where it fell to Yggdrasil's roots. Odin drank from the well, which granted him the wisdom of the ages, and through his severed eye, Odin had visions. He saw glimpses of runes that he could not explain, and moments of Ragnarok. However, Odin could not clearly see these visions, so he made another sacrifice. Odin impaled himself with his spear Gundir, or a piece of Yggdrasil, and hung himself from Yggdrasil's branches. And for 9 days and nights, with no food nor mead, Odin swayed from Yggdrasil, slowly bleeding into its roots. During this time, the Germanic and pagan people believed that Odin was in a state between life and death. His mind was freed from his body, so for 9 days, Odin's body traveled to the realm of Hel in Niflheim, and he slowly learned to translate a rune each day from the dead. On the 9th night, while translating the final rune, something happened. For a brief moment, light disappeared in the 9 realms. The sun was gone. the living realm of Midgard and the dead realm of Niflheim collapsed on one another. During this brief time, sorcery, spirits, and necromancy entered Midgard. They became incredibly powerful. Midgard was overrun by these forces of sorcery, necromancy, and spirits until Odin woke up, screaming, at the end of the ninth night, and the two realms separated once again. During this process, Odin became incredibly powerful as he became part of Yggdrasil. Additionally, he had translated all the runes and also saw Ragnarok. He saw Loki's betrayal, Baldur's death, Thor's death by the Midgard serpent, his own death by Fenrir, and the destruction of Asgard by the giant Surtur. Unsure if he could be fate, Odin tried anyway. He chained down and blinded the wolf Fenrir. He had the Midgard serpent cast into the seas. He ordered Thor to kill all the giants in Midgard, which all eventually led to the giants invading Asgard during Ragnarok, and the death of the Aesir. Queen Marika, the Eternal, is the god queen of the lands between. She has blonde hair, wears a cloak, and in Ranni's ending, we can see her fractured head, and see that she is missing both eyes. There are two talismans in Elden Ring. One's called Marika's Scar Seal, and one is called Marika's Sword Seal. Marika's Scar Seal is found at the base of a waterfall, in Siofra, which you access by going down the Siofra River well. Both items are described as eyeballs, with runes inscribed on them. Now, we don't know much about Marika's personality. It's quite ambiguous. We can assume, though, that she is a well-spoken and ruthless leader, and we can assume this from Melena's history lessons that she gives us in church. However, if you want to understand Marika more, you need to analyze her past actions. When the gloam-eyed queen harnesses a piece of the rune of death and imbues her flame with it, creating the black flame, which is at risk of killing the gods, Marika orders Malekith to defeat her in battle, take the rune of death, so that the gloam-eyed queen and her godskins no longer pose any threat. When Marika decides to create her own order, she creates the Golden Order, which she creates by removing the rune of death from the Elden Ring. When a part of the rune of death is stolen by Princess Ranni, and she arms the Black Knife assassins with death-infused blades, Marika has Malekith retrieve the fragment and imbue his body with the rune of death, so it can never be stolen again. So Queen Marika is very concerned about the rune of death. But why is she so concerned about the rune of death? In an early interview with our Lord and Savior Miyazaki, Miyazaki stated that, and I quote, "The demigods' immortality stems from having their fated deaths removed from the Elden Ring. Removing death changed the fates of the demigods. So Queen Marika is obsessed with fate. But how does Marika know her fate? And how does she know that she needs to change her fate? Unless she's already seen fate. Which means that Queen Marika can see fate. Look at this. When we find Queen Marika in-game, she is inside the Erdtree, hanging from a rune arc, with a red spear sticking out of her side. She looks hollow, lifeless, maybe even soulless. And we see her body fall limp to the ground. The only time that we've seen Queen Marika's body move is when Radagon begins to take control of her body and grabs Marika's hammer so he can try and fight off the Tarnished who just entered. It's very odd. We don't see Queen Marika herself move. Only Radagon taking control of the body. So yes, I think Queen Marika is Odin. Queen Marika and Odin are both blonde gods depicted with cloaks. They are both missing an eyeball, which can be found at the bottom of a well. Marika is the queen of the demigods and the lands between. Odin is the king of the 9 realms. Odin can shapeshift, and Marika is closely tied to the Mimic Veil, which is called Marika's Mischief, and can be used to shapeshift. They both impaled themselves with a spear and hung themselves from the World Tree. Odin foresaw that Fenrir was going to kill him during Ragnarok, so he imprisoned the wolf in shackles, which did nothing to stop his death. Queen Marika foresaw that destined death was going to kill her, So she imprisoned the Rune of Death in Malekith's body, which did nothing to stop the player from killing her during the shattering. Odin made Yggdrasil from the body of Ymir. Marika may have made the Erd Tree from a pile of bodies in the Land of Shadow. They both waged war against the giants, which resulted in the extinction of the giants. You can piece together more yourself. But what really concerns me is Queen Marika hung from the Erd Tree, but she never woke up. Do you remember the 9th night of Odin's hanging? How Niflheim and Midgard came into each other and fell upon each other, which made two realms become one, which allowed spirits, necromancy, and sorcery to invade Midgard. Well, this ended the morning of the 10th day, when Odin's spirit came back to his body and he awoke, which separated Midgard and Niflheim and prevented spirits, necromancy, and sorcery from coming into Midgard. But I wonder, what would have happened if Odin didn't wake up? I think, logically, that Midgard would still be plagued by spirits, necromancy, and sorcery. And what are the lands between like? Turn anywhere in the lands between, and there is a spirit waiting to tell you something. There are spirit banners from old wars, spirit warriors, spirit caller snails which, you guessed it, summon more spirits. There are 2 gods which are currently spirits. There are spirit calling bells, which can be used to summon just about any spirit. Vengeful spirits, Black Knife Assassin, Puppeteer Tarnished, free rats! I mean, why not? If you have the mind for it, the sky's the limit. And what about necromancy? Revenants, wraiths, mariners, deathbirds, those who live in death. For God's sakes, there's an entire sorcery set dedicated to necromancy, which was rediscovered recently by a necromancer who we can meet in-game. And of course, who could forget Godwyn, a necromantic undead demigod, who is having a dream of an undead dragon who can be killed, which drops the mending rune of death, which can be used to imbue necromancy into the Elden Ring. And sorcery? Don't even get me started on sorcery. There are 2 dungeons dedicated to sorcery and sorcery students. There are 13 types of sorcery, ranging from casting the primeval current, to shooting magical arrows, to sacrificing a bit of your health to grow a dangerous thorny plant, to summoning great tornadoes of ice. And who could forget Radon, a demigod who is holding an entire galaxy of stars in place with gravity sorcery, while his mind is being eaten alive by a disease that infects everything. Spirits, necromancy, and sorcery rule the lands between. They have never been more powerful or more prominent a theme in any From Software game, which leads to my predictions. I think that Queen Marika did the exact same thing Odin did. I think that she sacrificed her body to the Erd Tree and abandoned her flesh like Ranni and Miquella. I think she traveled to the Land of Shadow to try and learn how to change her fate and better understand the Elden Ring's runes. I think that this act caused aspects of the Land of Shadow to spill into the lands between, which allowed spirits, necromancy, and sorcery to become as powerful as they are. However, I think that when Queen Marika's spirit tried to re-enter her body, something stopped her, which prevented the Age of the Shattering from ending. There are 2 other demigods in the Land of Shadow. Why don't we talk about them? Miquella is a strange case. Miquella is a demigod. He has blonde hair and feminine features, which makes people mistake him as a woman. His sister Melania states that Miquella has the wisdom, the allure of a god, and he is stuck in perpetual youth, which makes him appear like a child. He is the most beloved demigod, but he's also been known to compel affection in unnatural ways, through magic. Miquella was captured by Mohg, Lord of Blood, who wished to make him his consort. He is associated with amber through the amber in the Miquella Knight's sword and the amber starlight shard. The amber starlight shard is found in front of Miquella's statue, in a crevice that looks like this. Miquella created and then taught his father Radagon Golden Order fundamentalist incantations, before eventually abandoning his studies to focus on understanding unalloyed gold. Miquella grew the Halig tree from parts of his body, which, as we can see, has pink leaves or pink flowers on it. In the DLC announcement photo, we can see that Miquella rode through a meadow. Additionally, in the DLC trailer, we can see that Miquella is being followed by a group of people. And this one looks like a woman. In the game's cut content, it is revealed that Miquella is the holder of the Rune of Abundance, and Miquella has a spiritual counterpart called Saint Trina. Miquella does a lot, and not a lot of it interconnects very well. He is an extremely complex character in Elden Ring, so it was extremely hard for me to find an exact, pinpoint Norse counterpart. So I broadened my horizons and concluded that Miquella takes after Freya. Freya is my favorite mythological deity, as she is not only a well-discussed Norse god, but also a highly respected Germanic and pagan god. Because of this, she is an extremely complex figure. Freya is a Vanir god, who lives with the Aesir gods in Norse mythology. She is the most beautiful goddess, with long golden hair. Freya is the god of love, witchcraft, magic, gold, fertility, spirituality, and war. The Germanic people believed she was also the god of abundant life, the personification of purifying gold, and a god of death in an unusual sense. Freya is widely loved by gods, giants, and humanity itself. The giants really love Freya though, and there are many stories of the giants kidnapping Freya to try and marry her because they simply love her so much. When Freya cries, she sheds tears of gold and amber. Freya, as a pagan god, is worshipped by women. There are pagan cults dedicated to the study of Freya. Freya is also a powerful sorcerer, and she teaches these sorceries to Odin. The Germanic people also believe that Freya is as beautiful as she is because Odin burned away all her impurities, like gold being distilled and reforged, which is kind of like unalloyed gold, pure gold. As a ruler of the dead, the Germanic also believed that her wisdom was only second to Odin, as the dead were the source for most stories, spells, and knowledge in the world, and Freya could communicate with them directly. Additionally, the Germanics say that Freya actually saw the runes of Ragnarok before Odin did, but because she did not make the necessary sacrifices, she was unable to translate them. Freya is associated with myrtle trees, which are trees with pink flowers, and people sacrifice to Freya for abundant harvest and increased fertility. But the Germanic people also feared that Freya had a wicked side. And I quote, "In the necromantic form, she has a greed for wealth and can kill by magic. She is an entrapping goddess. Better to stay with her side of lust and love." Let's compare. Both Freya and Miquella have blonde hair and feminine features. Miquella and Freya are both gods of love and have methods of compelling love unnaturally. They are both kidnapped by other gods for the purpose of marriage. They are both closely associated with amber and pure or unalloyed gold. They are both sorcerers who taught other gods sorceries. They both have ties to abundance. Miquella is clearly, or called, the wisest and strongest demigod by millennia, and Freya is called wise and strong by the Germanic and pagan peoples. They are both closely associated with trees that have pink flowers and leaves. They are both followed by women, and I will touch on why I think that all of Miquella's followers are women. Lilies are a symbol of rebirth and fertility, and Freya's symbols are those of rebirth and fertility. Both gods have an evil counterpart. Miquella has Saint Trina, and Freya has her necromantic form. And I was going to stop there. I thought there was nothing more to discuss. But after doing more research, I realized I mistaked something. Freya isn't a god of magic. She's the god of Seidr magic. And this completely changed the way I thought about Elden Ring. In Norse mythology, Seidr is just another type of magic that allows future sight through unspecified means. But in pagan text, Seidr is a magical practice of disconnecting the soul from the body to visit the spirit realm, which allows you to communicate with the dead and see the future. Disconnecting the soul requires the body to undergo one of three things. 1. You must have powerful dreaming. 2. You must have hallucinations or visions. Or 3. You must bring the body close to death. If one of these are met, the spirit is disconnected from the body, and the disconnected living spirit can freely enter the land of the dead if one or more requirement is met. 1. You attend with spirit animal who can move freely between both worlds. 2. You bring mistletoe, which symbolizes death. 3. You self-inflict an injury as a sacrifice. Or 4. You carry the branch of a red-sapped tree. However, the requirements can be totally ignored under special conditions. Special women, called the Daughters of Freya, who follow Freya as a religion, can enter the afterlife freely because Freya self-inflicted an injury and met the requirement for them. Also, Freya is the ruler of Asgard, so she can enter the afterlife freely. So there are 6 total requirements. Regardless, if I am right, then I can make some huge predictions about the DLC. First, the Land of Shadow is a mixture of Asgard and Niflheim, and it is under the lands between. Second, Melina, Ranni, Miquella, and Queen Marika have all entered the Land of Shadows using Seidr magic. Third, Miquella purposely or accidentally taught Ranni and Queen Marika Seidr magic. 4. Tree spirits are in the lands between because of the Erd trees burning. And maybe, 5th, Mesmer is Surtur and Hel. Let me explain. So from what little we know of the Land of Shadow, it is composed of a few different areas. There are sprawling fields, there's a forest, which is behind a gravity bore, and there are these large castles. These all point to the Land of Shadow being based on Asgard. Asgard is described as a beautiful afterlife, with lush green grass, tall trees, littered with castles and halls to dine in, which are supplied food from meadows of grain. Asgard is also the afterlife for warriors exclusively, and in the Lands of Shadow, we can see all 3. Also, the fields in Asgard are called Folkvangar, and Freya is the ruler of Folkvangar. We can see Miquella riding in this field, which is probably a reference to Freya. But the Lands of Shadow also have dark elements. There are these swamps of toxins with abominations in them. There are areas covered in thick mist and fog, deep caverns which house necromantic beings. That definitely isn't Asgard, but it does sound like the other afterlife, Niflheim. Niflheim roughly translates to Mist Realm or Fog Realm. It is a dark, cold, and misty, foggy dimension, home to hideous creatures and the bodies of those who died weak. The Germanic people also believed that there were 11 poisonous rivers in Niflheim, so all of these environments look like they could be from Niflheim. Within Niflheim lies the kingdom of Hel, ruled by Hel, which is a freezing cold area covered in fog and home to the frost giants. Within Hel, there is a place called Nostrand, also known as the Corpse Shore. Nostrand is described as a long hallway, which leads to a doorway that faces north. The hallway is surrounded by dead bodies of murderers, oathbreakers, traitors, and adulterers. Yggdrasil's roots grow into Nostrand, as Nostrand's giant piles of bodies feed it. These piles of bodies are also miles high, and they are home to a great serpent known as Nidhogg. Are you seeing this? The long hallway. The doorway which faces north where a north wind could blow in. The giant piles of bodies. It is nearly a 1-to-1 description. But how can the Land of Shadow be both Asgard and Niflheim? Well, the pagans have an answer for us. The pagans believe that there was only one afterlife. They thought that those who died in battle went to the light side of the afterlife, and those who died cowards went to the dark side. The light side is Asgard, and the dark side is Niflheim. And the pagans believed that death was rebirth. You didn't die and become a spirit, you die and reincarnated in the afterlife, which would explain why other species exist in the land of shadow. It's not just a land of spirits, but also a land of living beings. I also think that the land of shadow is underneath the lands between, because the pagans believed that Odin grew Yggdrasil. Odin grew Yggdrasil from the body of Ymir, the largest giant, and he grew it between Niflheim and Muspelheim. As Yggdrasil grew, the other realms were created on the branches of Yggdrasil. In this example, we have Midgard and we have Jotunheim, the land of the giants. These two are also specifically placed as traditionally Jotunheim is higher on the tree than Midgard. So if the lands of shadow are where the Erdtree were born, then it needs to be under the lands between. Also, Queen Marika is Numen. The Numen runes can be found underground, and the Numen people are extremely closely associated with the Nox people, which are night people who live underground. So maybe Queen Marika and the Numen made a journey to the surface, going from the Lake of Rod, to Noxtella, to the Deep Root Depths, to Siofra River, to Nokron, and finally up into Limgrave, where they made a pilgrimage into Leyndell, and eventually traveled to the Giant's Peak, and waged war with the Giants. This would validate tarnished archaeologists' theory of the underground Erdtree cult, but that's foggy speculation at best. Speaking of fog, Niflheim roughly translates to realm of fog or realm of mist, which reminded me of these two, Melina and Ranni. When we first meet both of these characters, they appear out of nowhere, surrounded by fog. Melina is burned and bodiless, and Ranni shed her flesh, so they are both spirits. And when I realized that, another thing clicked. Melina, Ranni, Marika, and Miquella all meet a requirement to complete a Seidr ritual. Melina is burned and bodiless. That's a self-inflicted injury. Ranni had the curse mark of death carved into her body, which is thematically the same as mistletoe in Elden Ring because of Godwyn's relation to Baldur. Queen Marika not only hung herself, but the pagans believed that the spear in Odin's body was a branch of Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil was a red ash tree, so he was carrying the branch of a red sap tree. And the spear in Marika is bright red and looks like wood. Miquella is Freya, so he can come and go to the land of shadows as he pleases. And then there's the band of people following Miquella, who are clearly a reference to the daughters of Freya, so they can enter the lands of shadow because Miquella made a sacrifice for them. Although, that does mean all of them would have to be girls, and I don't know if some of these are girls. Yeah, it's up in the air. And this also doesn't explain how we enter the land of shadow. We aren't always female, so we can't be Miquella's followers. We didn't self-inflict a wound, or bring mistletoe, or bring red sapwood. But we did bring Torrent, the spectral steed, who can travel to the lands between and the lands of shadow at will. And that is it. All 6 say the requirements demonstrated in Elden Ring. And now you may be wondering, how did Marika and Ranni learn Seidr magic? Seidr is a practice usually only taught to women, and their Norse counterparts are both men, so it'd be untraditional for them to know Seidr. Well, remember how I said that Freya taught Odin magic? Well, the specific type of magic she taught Odin was Seidr magic. That's why Odin is sometimes called feminine, because he practices a magic only taught to women. Additionally, there is a poem that states that Loki disguised himself as another god to spy on Freya teaching Odin magic. So I think that Marika learned Seidr magic from Miquella, and that Ranni learned it indirectly by eavesdropping on the two. I don't know about Melina, but judging by the fact that she knows Marika's old spoken speeches, maybe Marika and Melina were close, and Marika just taught her Seidr magic. Or maybe she translated the Sather practices from spoken echoes. Either way, I don't know for sure. But I do know who this is. Nidhogg is a dragon/serpent like Smaug and Jormungandr, which you guys can figure out this relation on your own. Nidhogg lives in the corpse shore, Nostrand, in Yggdrasil's roots. It eats the roots of Yggdrasil and feasts on blood from the corpse shore. But during Ragnarok, it leaves and resurfaces in Midgard. Surtur destroys Asgard and burns Yggdrasil. In Midgard, it feasts on men who are panicked by Ragnarok and eats bits of the tree. After Ragnarok ends, Nidhogg returns to Niflheim, and it's an odd story, but what concerns me is that Nidhogg looks exactly like the tree spirits. They're both missing their back limbs, they both have giant gaping mouths, long tails, and look like wingless dragons. The tree spirits breathe holy flame, the same way that Placidusax does, which demonstrates that the tree spirits have draconic aspects to them. Additionally, you find tree spirits underground by Erd tree roots, just like where you find Nidhogg. I'm predicting that we will see more tree spirits in the DLC, since the DLC is going to be like Niflheim, so there should be more Nidhoggs down there. But what I said isn't entirely true. Sometimes tree spirits are found on land. There are 3 tree spirits that resurface at the Ashen Capital. There's one that can be found at the Volcano Manor, and there are 2 that can be found around Lane Dell. The 3 that appear after we burn the Erd Tree make sense, as burning the Erd Tree is the same as burning Yggdrasil. The one at the Volcano Manor makes sense, as it's in front of a burned minor Erd Tree, which is similar to Yggdrasil. But these 2 by the capital are not by any burnt trees. So what gives? Well, if we look closer in Langdell, we can see residual piles of ash, which indicate that the Erd Tree was burned once before, a long time ago. So who burned the Erd Tree first? Yep, finally made it to Mesmer. I think Mesmer is Surtur. Surtur lives in the primordial fire realm Muspelheim, which is covered in volcanoes and lava. During Ragnarok, Surtur destroys Asgard and accidentally burns Yggdrasil. We can see that Mesmer is burning the Land of Shadow, which would be the same as burning Asgard, just like Surtur. Additionally, the pictures in the Volcano Manor depict that the Erd Tree was burned once before. Behind Reichart's throne in the Volcano Manor, we can see a 2-headed snake tapestry, which looks exactly like Mesmer's 2-headed snake. In the same room, we find pillars, which look very similar to the spiral pillars outside the castle in the Land of Shadow, which makes it similar to Land of Shadow architecture. Therefore, I think that Mesmer arrived in the Lands of Shadow with Queen Marika. I think he came to the surface and was the original inhabitant of the Volcano Manor, and some time ago, he burned the Erd Tree. I think this caused Queen Marika to banish Mesmer and his army into the Land of Shadow, using Sather magic. This is just like how Odin banished Hel into Niflheim. And I think that Mesmer became a cruel, evil, greedy god of death, just like how Hel became a cruel, evil, greedy god of death. But aside from Norse mythology, I think that Mesmer is a foil to Hoaraloo. I think that Mesmer fought wars with Queen Marika, just like Hoaraloo, and when a time of peace came to the Lands Between, both warriors were given a choice: put down the sword or face punishment. Hoaraloo took Sarash upon his back and became Godfrey, which allowed him to become the first Elden Lord. But Mesmer refused to stop waging wars. Marika could not extinguish his flame of ambition, so she was forced to banish him to the Land of Shadows to protect the Lands Between. And now Mesmer is the uncrowned king of the Land of Shadows. In conclusion, I think that Radagon is Thor, Ranni is Loki, Queen Marika is Odin, Miquella is Freya, the tree spirits are Nidhogg, and Mesmer is a mixture of Surtur and Hel, while also being the foil of Hoaraloo. I think the shattering is Ragnarok, but it never ended because of Queen Marika's Sather practice. I think that the Land of Shadow is underneath the Lands Between, and I fully expect to fight more spirits, necromancers, sorcerers, and tree spirits in the Land of Shadow. Elden Ring is by far my favorite game. I have dumped a disgusting amount of time into this game, building characters, reading item descriptions, and trying to understand it. I am incredibly grateful that I was able to make this connection to Norse mythology, and I cannot wait to revisit this theory. If you like any part of this theory in particular, please leave a comment letting me know. I will read all of them. Huge thank you to Smotown, Tarnished Archaeologist, and Last Protagonist. Although I have not spoken with any of them directly, their videos helped me understand the game and discover these connections. They also inspired me to make this video, so make sure to check them out. Full script and presentation are in the video description, so you can skim through if you missed anything. And with that out the way, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.